So welcome. Today's video is going to be about breaking down crow pose. It would help if you're already pretty warm, maybe do some hip opening, a little bit of core work. We'll take about 10 minutes or so to kind of warm up before we start to get into the logistics of the pose. So it will also help if you have one block. If you don't, that's okay as well, but it's a really good thing to have. I say this every video, but do yourself a favor, buy some blocks. So go ahead and start yourself off in a wide knees child's pose. So just take the big toes together, let the knees come the width of your mat, crawl the fingertips forward, drop the forehead down. And think about making this one more active. So really press into the palms, press into the hands, send the hips back towards the heels. And feel the armpits really kind of active around there. So think about wrapping the biceps up towards the sky, wrapping the triceps down towards the ground, and hugging everything towards the middle. With your next inhale, roll forward, come onto hands and knees. Start to drop the belly, open up through the chest. And as you exhale, press and round the spine. Inhale, drop the belly, squeeze the heels in towards the bum, reverse the flex of the feet. And as you exhale, press round the spine, point the toes towards the back of the room, lift the knees up, and come into this plank pose with the feet pointing towards the back. Breathe in, slowly drop the knees, squeeze the heels in, engage. And exhale, press the tops of the feet into the mat, and lift the hips up, come into this reverse plank. Do that one more time. When we get to the top of this plank, I want us to hold, lift the hips really high, point the toes towards the back of the room, feel the shoulders stacking over the wrist, just start to sway a little bit of space from front to back into the wrist, keep lifting the hips up nice and high. Then roll over the toes, shift the hips back, come into a downward facing dog. Inhale, roll forward into plank pose. Drop the knees towards the mat. Shift the shoulders past the wrists. As you exhale, lower halfway, wrap the triceps and the elbows in towards the midline. Inhale, press back up. Exhale, lower halfway. Inhale, press back up. Exhale, halfway. Inhale, back up. And exhale, downward dog. Inhale, lift the heels, roll forward, plank. So either knees drop or knees lifted. Hug the inner thighs together. Shift the shoulders past the wrists. Exhale, lower halfway, hold, wrap the triceps in. Inhale, press back up. Exhale, lower halfway, hold. Inhale, press. Exhale, lower. Inhale, press. This time drop the knees. Shift the hips back towards the heels. Take the elbows and the forearms down. Bring the palms together. Walk the elbows forward a little bit and come into this variation of child's pose. And roll forward, come back into your downward facing dog. And take the feet together at the back of your mat. Start to bend the knees, shift the hips back, and allow the knees to open up towards the sides. Keep shifting the hips back, keep pressing into the palms, looking between your hands. As you breathe in, straighten the legs, roll forward into plank pose. Exhale, bend the knees, shift back, open up through the hips, look forward. And exhale, come forward. Inhale back. And exhale forward. Inhale back. Exhale forward. Inhale back. And exhale, we're going to step or hop to the front of the mat. And come into a forward fold. From your forward fold, heel toe your feet a little bit wider than the distance of your hips. Shift the hips back. Come right into your low squat. Ground through the outer edges of your feet. Lift the hips a little bit away from the heels to make this more active. Press the knees out towards the sides. Maybe even bring the elbows away from the knees. Try to sit up really tall. From here, we're going to drop the bum down towards the ground. Send the feet out towards the front. Reach the arms out into boat pose. Slowly drop it down, half boat. Hover the shoulders, hover the feet. Exhale, curl up. Inhale, drop down. Exhale, curl up. It's for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come back down half boat. Keep the shoulders lifted. Open up the legs really wide. Reach the hands out. Curl the shoulders up. Now bend both knees. Draw them in. Take the elbows, cactus the arms. Take the elbow, the right elbow, right on top of the right knee. Take the left elbow right on top of the left knee. Press the palms up towards the sky. Pull the right knee to the top of the right elbow. Pull the left knee to the top of the left elbow and resist for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release. Press into the soles of your feet, lift the hips, and come into a quick little bridge pose. Breathing into the front of the body, hugging the inner thighs towards each other. And exhale, drop the hips back down. Catch the back of the knees, start to kick, rock up and down the length of your spine. Try to come right into your low squat. Moment here. So let's start to break down the pose a little bit now. So when we're doing crow pose, it's the way I'm teaching it today, it's going to be a bent elbow variation. So there's a difference, between the bent arm crow and the straight arm crow. And today we're going to be focusing on the bent elbow variation. So if you want to think about it, you can think of it as kind of like a squat or a child's pose stacked on top of a low plank. Right? So if you see this shape, and then you put it on top of this shape, it equals this shape. So in order to do crow pose, we need to be able to hold a strong chaturanga, which is our low plank. We need to be able to kind of flex the hip quite a bit so the knee can come in. And we also need to be able to flex the knee more so that we can squeeze the heel in. So these things come into play when we are working with these poses. So the more you kind of strengthen your chaturangas, the more you can flex your hips and your knees, the easier it's going to be to come into your crow. So there's lots of different ways to teach crow, and none of them are necessarily wrong. A lot of teachers teach crow with the knees towards the outsides of the elbows, so that you're kind of in this variation where you're hugging everything towards the midline, you're floating the feet up here, and you're in your crow. And that's a great way to really strengthen. I personally find it even harder than the variation I do. Maybe because I don't do it as much, but the way that I like to approach crow is to have the knees stacked directly above the elbows. So what I mean by that is, when I come into chaturanga, if you look at my arms, my triceps are trying to create, and my elbows are creating this shelf. So the idea is to stack my knees on top of the shelf. So as you plant the palms down, you lift the heels, you start to lean forward. From here, you need to wrap the triceps back and the elbows back. This is another contradictory things. Some teachers like to do it with the elbows out wide, which is, especially, Ashtanga teachers like to do this, elbows out wide. That's cool too. But really, I personally think the best way is to do it with the elbows hugging towards the rib cage. I find I recruit way more strength that way, and I'm really moving from the center of my body. So as you try to stack the knees on top of the elbows, wrap the triceps back, you lean forward, lift the hips up, and even from here, the step number one is to really try to find that point of bringing the knee right to the back of the elbow, leaning forward and starting to bend the elbow. So even if both feet stay on the ground here, I'm still looking for stacking the knee on top of the elbow, and this is a really great prep point to stay at for a long time, and just hold this here. And what tends to happen when we do this as well is sometimes we like to bring the knee higher up towards the triceps or the armpits, so it's more like something like this. I'm gonna fall, no. But it's something like this where we're a little bit higher up. Same concept applies, we're still stacking, but it's a lot less stable. And I heard this best explained actually through an Instagram post by Dylan Werner, and basically, if you stack the knees right on top of the elbows, I'm trying to create a straight stack from my knees to my hips. So my kind of upper thigh bone is really directly stacking, or it's intending to directly stack right on top of the elbows. So this way, I'm really centered through my gravity. I'm broadening through my collarbones. I'm steadying through my gaze, and the weight is forward into my fingertips. So that's one of the most key action, is that the weight is moving forward in crow pose, just like many arm balances. So we need to get the weight out of the heel of the hands and into the fingertips, which is why it's really important to strengthen your wrists and your forearms and really engage those muscles. So I have another video on that as well if you're not too sure what I'm talking about. It's called Yoga for Wrists or something like that. Check it out. But super, super key concept. Because if my weight is back here in my hands, then my hips are not going high enough, and I'm going to be somewhere here. So you see I'm here, but as soon as I start to shift the weight forward into my hands, I can lift the hips higher, squeeze everything towards the middle, and move from the center. So knees right on top of elbows. Like, it's still a hard pose, but when you get it that way, it's much easier to sustain. So one way to do it if you're really scared of face planting is to use a block underneath your forehead. But eventually you're going to have to get over that, and you're going to eventually face plant maybe a couple times. Hopefully it's not too bad, but this is just a little training tool. And it's also really good because you can really play with shifting your weight forward. So my weight's so forward that my head is resting on the block. So now I can focus on finding that stack of the knee on top of the tricep. Well, I'm really supported with my head on the block, so my weight's moving forward. And once you get comfortable doing that, you can lose the block. Another great option, if you're finding that it's hard for you to get this lift and actually allow the knees to go to the back of the elbows, then you can place a block actually underneath your feet, and this will give you more height so that you don't have to lift as high, and that when you lean forward, it's easier to find the knees right to the backs of the elbows, because I'm getting a little bit of a boost here. As I wrap everything in, just lean forward, float one or both feet, come right into your crow. So those are two good options you can use with the blocks. When I first started learning crows, one of those poses I thought I would never be able to do. I never used blocks. I just kind of practiced it over and over and over again, learned some new tricks, kept going for it, face planted a few times, and eventually, I got the hang of it. It's a really foundational arm balance. So if you're at the point, whether you're using a block or not, where you are having both feet on the ground, you're feeling the knees stacked on top of the elbows, and you're feeling the weight going forward, the next step would be to squeeze one heel, not both, into the bum, hold, maybe for like 5 seconds, release the foot, same thing with the other one, release down. And just progressively do that over time and eventually work to get both feet off the ground. So to get crow pose, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, but you want to focus on having a really strong foundational chaturanga. My personal preference, once again, is to wrap the elbows in towards the midline. And this I find helps with a lot of other arm balances too. A lot of people will, say wrap the elbows a little bit further out. Nothing wrong with that, just personal preference. I find that when I hug everything towards the middle, I'm recruiting more of my strength and I'm able to move more from my center when I'm moving from, arm balance to arm balance or pose to pose that involve being on the hands. So other than that, you can work on, creating space through the hips, getting deeper hip flexion. So think about doing more things that involve actively bringing the knee closer in towards the chest. That's a really terrible example, but maybe something standing like this. Even gecko poses where you are coming down, getting into this more passive kind of hip flexion. Anything like that is going to help. Lots of wrist, lots of forearm strengthening. Right, there's tons of different things you can do to make this pose a little easier to get the hang of. But at the end of the day, keeping all this in mind, it's just practice, practice, practice. Do it over and over and over again. Do it every day, multiple times, and just keep checking in. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to shoot me a message or whatever, and I'll be happy to answer. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Peace.